Good evening. The big breaking news story: an international collaboration of journalists across different media houses have indicated a massive international effort at hacking the phones of journalists around the world, including many in India. Now, we'll come to the details in a moment, but in terms of what the bigger story is, the numbers of those in the database include 40 journalists, 3 major opposition figures, 1 constitutional authority, I'm talking about India alone over here, 2 serving ministers in the Narendra Modi government, current and former heads, and officials of security organizations, and scores of business persons. Now, that is the overall scope of what has been revealed in terms of an overview piece. It's been published in The Wire. The Wire has actually come out with 2 pieces today. This overview piece describes the scope of the investigation which has been done internationally on this massive phone tap, apparently using the spyware Pegasus. And then there are details in a more in another article with which elaborates on just what they are talking about, and that has details on how 40 Indian journalists were targeted by the spyware Pegasus. Their phones were hacked, the spyware was inserted, and information was evidently extracted. The question is, at whose behest was all of this done? It's not the first time that this has happened in India. We are joined by M.K. Venu of The Wire. We've got several others joining us as well, but let me just go straight across to Srinivasan Jain, who's been tracking this story very closely. Vasu, you've had a chance to go through the Wire piece which has come out in just the last little while. As far as the piece on India is concerned, what are some of the main points?
Well, the main points, Vishnu, are, as you pointed out, that what we have is both a wider sweep of all those who have reportedly been targeted, according to The Wire and according to this effort by this consortium of journalists and media organizations, as well as a more specific focus on what The Wire has printed today in terms of names of journalists. So the wider sweep, as you pointed out, suggests that it's not just journalists which were named in The Wire's piece today, but also opposition figures, a constitutional authority, they say, serving ministers in the Narendra Modi government, current and former heads of officials of security organizations, as well as business persons. So that gives you the much wider sweep of the Pegasus targeting compared to what we'd found last time in 2019. Remember, it was mostly human rights defenders and activists. This time, at least based on this data dump, if indeed the information is correct, suggests a much wider sweep. Coming to the specific instances of the journalists, again, as you pointed out, 40 journalists have been named in this list, which includes journalists in the Indian Express, in the Hindu, in the Hindustan Times, including founder members of The Wire themselves. And obviously, the NSO group, which is the sort of the manufacturer or the maker of Pegasus, Vishnu, has maintained throughout that they don't actually supply this information to anybody but governments to use this spyware only for national security purposes. But according to The Wire's piece, they actually tested some of the phones that were reportedly targeted for infection by Pegasus using apparently the services of Amnesty International, and they found that a significant number of those phones were infected or were successfully targeted by Pegasus. So that does raise the question of exactly how all of this was authorized. If indeed Pegasus only sells to governments, then which government is it that actually was involved in this? Because so far the Indian government, at least based on what they had said in 2019, was rather evasive about whether Pegasus was indeed a client of theirs or not.
This came up in Parliament as well. We are joined by Vijeta Singh. She's one of the journalists who's named in that report. Vijeta, were you aware of the fact that that your phone was being hacked? Did any agency or Amnesty or any of these media houses reach across to you and say, look, we've got evidence to suggest that your phone has been hacked? Did you submit your phone for this forensic analysis?
So of course not. I was not aware that my phone is being watched by either by any private agency or a government agency. But yes, The Wire reached out to me, and I had my phone forensically analyzed by the Wire team. And they have apparently found some traces of attempt to spy on my phone, to hack into my phone, yes.
And Vijeta, when did they reach out to you?
They reached out to me the past few days.
Right. And, you know, Vijeta, you and at least two others on that list of 40 journalists cover national security. I found that as you know, I mean, I found that interesting. Is that, you know, something that raises your concern that it's because of the very sensitive nature of the job that you do, which also happens to be a job that I do, you know, you were targeted?
Right. It is very, it's disconcerting that somebody is actually listening to your phone, but I will, as I told the wire also, I will not like to hazard any guess as to who did this, but yes, it is a bit disconcerting, and the nature of our work, it involves talking to officials, talking to senior government people, but we should not forget that whatever information we gather, whatever information we collect as part of our journalistic duties, it is in the papers the following days. So it is not that it is for our personal consumption or we are misusing it. So it is for everybody to see.
I just wanted to go across to Kamaljeet Singh Bedi because a lot of people are asking how exactly does Pegasus work. It's not just phone conversations, that may be a part of it, but it's essentially all data, Kamaljeet, on your phone that gets accessed, right? How does it work?
Yeah, you know, you really need to understand how sophisticated this hack is, because two things. One is you could remotely compromise someone's phone. You don't need physical access to the phone. And you not only are compromising WhatsApp, you are compromising the whole phone. So the 2019 exploit we are talking about was via WhatsApp, but then into the operating system. So it's, you know, like a multi-chain exploit that was used. It was so sophisticated that, you know, you could compromise someone's phone via missed call. And that could jailbreak into your device and then have complete control over your phone. And sitting deep inside the operating system, once they have control, you know, the first thing they would do is remove all the logs that the phone has been hacked. So, you know, a simple, you know, an IT person would never be able to figure out that it is already compromised. And then, like Vasu read out from that Citizen Lab site, they could do anything, right? Because they are now sitting at the operating system. They can see what you type. And again, not just on WhatsApp, but Telegram, Signal, or any other app that you were using. They could listen to your phone calls. They can track where you're going via GPS, calendar invites, email. And then, you know, one of the most scary part would be they could switch on the phone camera and even observe what you were doing without you ever knowing. So this is how sophisticated and full control that this NSO Pegasus software gives you over someone's life. And by the way, the 2019 exploit was patched as soon as WhatsApp and Apple got to know.
It's a cat and mouse game, right?
Yeah,
and one step ahead of that.
NSO has managed to get more exploits because, you know, they can buy these exploits in the dark web. They can figure it out themselves.
In fact, that's a question I wanted to put across to Venu. Venu, is this data, when does this data, you know, come from? Is it after WhatsApp patched their system to make it more secure, or is it before?
Well, frankly, Vishnu, I don't know the exact timeline and the cutoff point when WhatsApp tried to make it more secure and when these things happened, but it is very easy to conclude that WhatsApp did in 2019 formally notify to the Indian government that they gave specific months, May and September 2019, that there were there were problems, there were potential hacks of people, and they also gave a number, 121 people at that time, and there were exchanges between WhatsApp and the government on this. And after that, I presume WhatsApp also wrote to the government saying they regretted that this had happened. They said they would try to further, secure their systems and make it more solid, etc. But then, as we now see, subsequent to that, a lot of this has been going on. I guess the hackers are ahead of the game. That's the only thing you could conclude.
No, in fact, that's an important point, Prateek. The argument on WhatsApp and other systems, whether it's a Signal or Telegram, has always been about end-to-end encryption. They've gone and said so much about how safe and secure the systems are. But in fact, The Guardian, which has also been following up on this, has a very interesting headline. Revealed leak uncovers global abuse of cyber surveillance weapon. In other words, this end-to-end encryption business doesn't work. If you have the money, you can get your data. That's the bottom line. Would you agree?
Exactly. It's meaningless.
Yeah. Pratik, go ahead.
I want to comment first on the technical aspect. So there are two kinds of exploits. One is called a zero-click exploit, and one is called a one-click exploit. The WhatsApp exploit that we are talking about is a zero-click exploit. What it means is that the user does not have to click on anything. That in case of the WhatsApp exploit, sort of a phone call came in, a video call came in, and WhatsApp thought it's actually a video call, but it was a specially crafted packet which crossed something called a buffer overflow in the application, and eventually this exploit was installed on the phone. But there are also things called one-click exploit, where you might get a phishing email or you might get an SMS. So in 2019, for example, if you look at the Digital Violence website, Nihal Singh Rajput got an email, which was a phishing email. You might remember that just 2 weeks ago, multiple people on Twitter, their verified accounts were taken over because they got a link and they clicked on it. That is called a one-click exploit. I'm not saying that was done by anyone, so that could be some kiddie hacker, but there are sort of multiple kinds of exploits. So in case of, for example, Mr. Venu, it is not necessary that it was, the WhatsApp thing was already passed. If you look at, again, the Digital Violence website, you'll see that there was a exploit in the Safari browser which was exploited. Safari uses something, an underlying framework called WebKit framework, and which had an issue. So if you go to a specific website, then that website will exploit that vulnerability in your browser and enable to install the firmware. So there are multiple ways in which it is done. The typical method is that all of us use some 15, 20 apps, right? WhatsApp, a browser, a messaging software. So these are the apps which are typically on the radar of these organizations and individuals who try to find certain vulnerabilities. These are called zero-day vulnerabilities. That is prepared to unknown vulnerabilities. And these are either bots, and of course, NSO have their own individuals who are trying to find this. It is not necessary that they always have to buy it on the market. They have a huge team of researchers who are also trying to find these vulnerabilities in the most commonly used applications that are on the phone. And these are the vulnerabilities that are then exploited to install spyware on it.
Okay, Pratik, just hang on a second. I wanted to go across to Mr. Pawan Duggal. He's a Supreme Court advocate and a cyber law expert. Mr. Duggal, the obvious question is who did this? And the Wire and the others presumably haven't come out with who did this. Is it a state government? Is it our own government? Is it some other government? Is it some agency? Who is it? Is there a real fear that this is all going to end up in some black hole where the person from whom it is originated, access to this technology, the person who paid for this technology will never be revealed?
Well, unfortunately, it appears that this is the direction we are headed for, primarily because there are no legal foundations for this kind of an exercise. Why? Because if you have to intercept, if you have to surveil, there are only limited grounds, and that are given under Section 69 of the Information Technology Act 2000. I'm sure these grounds are very, very vast because they are in the interest of sovereignty, security, integrity of India, friendly relations with other nations, public order, decency, morality, or to prevent the commission of any cognizable offense. But then there are no specific crystal clear illustrations of what will qualify as national interests. So consequently, we don't even know who has ordered it, because it could be ordered either by state or non-state actors. It could be ordered within India. It could be ordered outside India. It's too early to even predict who would have done it. Now, of course, if we are going to ask the government as to whether any orders are going to be passed, that's one direction to go through. But in case if this has been done via bypassing the governmental route, because here, when I look at the horizon of the people who are targeted, it's a very kind of a distinctive mix and match of all kinds of people. It's not only journalists, it's politicians, it's business people and the like. So I think this is far more serious. And yes, the growing lesson and the growing message on the wall is very clear. The quicker we start realizing the fact that we are completely, clueless in terms of what's happening on our phones, the better it's going to be.
I'm just so sorry to interrupt, but I've got a couple of government reactions which are coming in. The news report also appears to be a similar phishing expedition based on conjectures and exaggerations to malign Indian democracy and its institutions. What else have they said? They have said, considering the fact that answers to the queries posed have already been in public domain for a long time. It also indicates poorly conducted research and a lack of due diligence by the esteemed media organizations involved. This is attributed to METI, right? PKD Nambiar, would you like to come in on this? The point is that you can slam the wire, which takes pride in a sense in being slammed or criticized because they believe they're coming out with the truth. But some of the finest media organizations around the world have done their own checks, their own editorial checks, and they've worked at length. So everybody is wrong, right? Nobody did their due diligence. I think you're on mute. Mr. Nambiar, just unmute yourself.
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Vishnu, I would first say that if anybody's phone is tapped, whether it is yours or mine or any individual's, which is definitely encroaching to the privacy of an individual. But the only challenge here is that there is a large number of reports, one after another comes from the last 1 or 2 years, which is all questioning the very integrity of our government. And secondly, who has tapped it? Whether is there a tapping has actually been done or not? So most of these reports comes with some kind of a question on the same report which comes out. So my question is that there are large number of spywares available. Why are we talking about the NSO or a Pegasus?
Because evidence of Pegasus has been found.
No, 1 second. If you type on a Google that saying that phone tapping software, you will get large number of spyware.
No, but that's not the point of this
quality.
exercise. I'm just making whether it's Pegasus or something else, these phones have been hacked. They've been examined by experts.
Those experts.
The issue is that the phones were hacked, not whether it was Pegasus or something else.
No, Vishnu, the question is that whether these phones have been tapped or not needs to be audited or checked by some kind of a legal framework.
Well, they've done that. In fact, let me put that to Venu. That's a key point over here. It's not as if you got a list and you published the list. You actually went and checked, and many of six journalists Venu on the list have given their phones to be examined by experts. Is that right?
Vishnu, somebody.
One sec, Mr. Nambiar, that you raised a point. Let's get an answer to that. Venu, you want to answer that? How did you cross-check whether phones were indeed tampered?
See, Vishnu, there are two buckets of cases here. One is from the database accessed by Forbidden Stories from the company, which the company has not denied. Right? The company has said, has merely said that these numbers are correct, but the company's only part that they are trying to deny is that the purpose of this could be something else. Now they are still vague about it. They have not stated the purpose. So the fact that these names and numbers across different countries, including India, that is not in dispute. Now within those numbers, now these are numbers which you could say describe as well collected for targeting. Now within those numbers, about 60 phones were examined by the Amnesty's technical lab with the help of other technical experts which Forbidden Stories has put together, and as well as in partnership with the Citizens Lab, which is the Toronto-based university, which has done a lot of work on this. So of those 60, it's also, Vishnu, not everybody, people are scared. People are not willing to give their phones for actual testing, right? Of those 60, I think roughly 35 to 37 have been found to have been infected with Pegasus.
All right. So that's an important detail. This has actually been looked at very closely. Mr. Nambiar, that answers your question. I'm going to take a short break and come back with more. Stay tuned. All right, well, it is an absolutely huge story which is breaking now across the world. And the scope of this is actually not just limited to India, because several media organizations around the world have actually come out with details on the extent of this entire leak which has appeared. Efforts have been made to actually to get details of various journalists and others and activists and lawyers and businessmen across the world. I'm going to try and give you an idea of the extent of just how big this actually is. So as far as India is concerned, the number of those in the database include over 40 journalists, 3 major opposition figures, 1 constitutional authority, 2 serving ministers in the Modi government, current and former heads and officials of security organizations, and scores of business persons. So Prateek, these aren't necessarily people who write against the government, right? Or are perceived to be against the government. It's basically a broad-based effort at snooping.
Right. So, I mean,
we don't know everything. It's just an observation.
Yeah, we don't know all the names yet, and the wire story says that they are also serving ministers who are on the list. We don't know the names of those ministers, but there have been cases in the past where even serving ministers have complained about having on. So it is not surprising that that is the case. And where does it say that the rebels are only in the people who are critical of the government? There will be people who are rebelling, even in those who are supporting the government, while outwardly showing support for the government. And in other cases, it is also possible that the government is suspicious of many other people who probably for personal gain are supporting the government and not for ideological reasons. And they are in the speculative.
Venu, last question to you, running short on time. What more is expected? Now, I mean, I'm not asking for details of the articles, obviously, but it doesn't end with this, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't end with this. And as I said earlier, this is a fascinatingly secular list. It has both critics of the government and great admirers of the government. And it is anybody's guess why there is such a sweep of surveillance. I'm not going to speculate. I would only end by saying, Vishnu,
yeah.
I just recall what Chief Justice of India Ramana said, I think yesterday or day before. These draconian laws and part of which is, of course, the law regarding surveillance should be used. He said that should be used. It's a saw which should be used to cut trees in a very targeted way, and you should not end up cutting the forest.
Venu, I don't mean to probe beyond the point. I just must ask you this, Venu: what categories of people are going to have? Will be out in the next couple of articles? Will there be activists? Will there be ministers?
Categories would be politicians, opposition leaders, as somebody said, ministers, business people, every walk of life, even scientists, every walk of life, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm out of time. I'd like to leave it over here. Apologies to some of my guests. I just haven't had time to come in. I'm so sorry about that. I'm going to take a short break, come back with a lot more. Stay tuned.